Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I tried to promise myself I wasn't going to do this, but I'm unable to add my editorial comments to those of my colleagues. And I would just ask my colleagues from the other side of the aisle if a $30.3 billion budget is out of balance. What is a $30.8 billion budget that nobody was willing to put up revenue votes for? But that aside, let's talk about the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay, thank you.
I know we don't have time to go through the whole reboot strategy, which I think is a great idea. My question is, from a resource point of view and appropriations, do you feel that your department in the 16-17 budget is going to have adequate resources in order to carry through with the compliance portion of the reboot strategy that's being proposed?
Yeah, great question, and you understand this well, being on the Chesapeake Bay Commission and all of the conversations we've had, so thank you for your support there. I think there's been a lot of conversation about the reboot, and we are anticipating a need. I think in the 16-17 year, I would say we're okay. But clearly forecasting is that there's going to have to be some additional resources for either DEP, State Conservation Commission, or PDA on the staff support, because as you know, one of the requirements is to be on 10% of the farms in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. That's 3,360 farms. That's a requirement for us. We can get there through conservation districts. So there may be a need for one of our state partners. There will definitely be a need in the conservation district side. I think as we step forward and recognize that the districts really are in the best position to address both the implementation of conservation practice generally, but also specifically on some of the expectations of the reboot, that's going to take some additional resources. And then you've got a third piece of this that I think when we get to the point of the farmers making practice improvements, we're going to have to confront the question of where do those resources come from for both plan development as well as implementation. We're fortunate at the moment that that's federal, and we have a farm bill that supports us there, but we're going to have to look at alternatives to just the line items that we have available to us today to do that.
One of the questions that I have when I was reading through and listening to the reboot strategy is the 50 inspections
Yes.
number, and is that 50 inspections per inspector, 50 inspections per county? Is it just a goal out there? If you could just touch on the 50 inspections.
Yeah, so the 50, and again, the reboot strategy, to my earlier point about the 10% inspection, we have to be on 10% of those farms. And in our calculation, the only way that we can achieve that is sort of working with the conservation districts. And in looking at what we presently ask them to do by delegation of the Commonwealth to them, is to do 100 educational visits. And what we've done is to substitute the 50 compliance visits, right? So the money hasn't changed, but the expectation has changed that we're moving from education to one of compliance. But it is 50 inspections per funded technician. Okay. Yes.
And finally, do you have any idea from your discussions with DEP what the EPA compliance requirements that we might be looking at may look like? Do we have any idea of that at this point?
I think we have, we don't have an exact, I'll say that. I think there's some concern that if we can't meet the requirements set forth in the watershed implementation plan, the WIP, and fulfill what we've identified in the reboot, that the backstop, as they refer to it, the backstop becomes a very sort of disciplined approach that will be administered by the EPA, and that'll be very farm specific. That will be very watershed specific. And there's concerns, of course, if that happened. And the only good sort of parallel that we have is what's happened on the point source side, right? That is very spot specific with a mandate of corrective actions and datelines and investments. We're trying to avoid that. And that's why this interim step right now with what we've done in the reboot really is critical for us, I think, to demonstrate we can do it and have full confidence we can do that. But it really requires us to take a pretty comprehensive approach, as we've noted in the reboot.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And for those in the room and maybe watching on PCN, what we're talking about is the EPA mandated requirements for Pennsylvania to clean up the Susquehanna River that is the main contributor of water to the Chesapeake Bay. And we are working diligently with the Secretary and the Secretary of DEP and DCNR to come up with a strategy that we can do that without having EPA come in heavy-handedly and hurt our farming community. So I look forward to working for you, Mr. Secretary, with you, and thank you for your testimony.
Thanks for your support. While we have the benefit of Dean Roush, who's here, just want to note that part of our strategy really is, for the first time, identifying the non-cost share practices that Pennsylvania has invested in. And that effort is being led in a partnered way, but really Dean Roush and the Penn State team taking the lead to do the survey, reach out to farms directly. Let's identify, what are the non-cost share, and the lingo here is the cost share are things that are already identified. We know what they are. Public has made an investment, and they show up in this model, which is our scorecard for success with water quality in the Chesapeake Bay. What we realized that the 80% of the practices that are being done are things that are just everyday good management practices that farmers do, but they're not in the accounting, they're not in the model, and so that needs to be sort of quantified. So appreciate Penn State and many others, but led by the dean and the Penn State team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.